If precision isn't there, all you need is a shot on the steel. Red dot optics are awfully hard to beat. Hello everyone, and welcome back to AmmoMart.com, where you can find real firepower online. As we're shooting this, it's Police Week in Ohio, and I would like to take a few moments to thank all of the boys in blue that are out there keeping our community safe. I recently lost an acquaintance of mine who was a policeman in a local township or local town around our area named Dominic Francis. Dominic lost his life while trying to display spike strips on the freeway and was run over by some escaped felons. Unfortunately, these things happen all too much in our community, and I know the city of Bluffton, Ohio will greatly miss Dominic, as well his kid's school, where he was a bus driver as well as a volunteer fireman. Once again, thanks to all of you guys in blue. We really do appreciate you. Today, I would like to take a little bit of time and discuss red dot optics for people that perhaps aren't super familiar with them, or maybe have recently made the transition over from iron sights to optics and are kind of lost. Unfortunately, it can take a while to make that transition successfully, and usually that's caused by a basic understanding of what the red dot is actually designed to do. So first, for those of you that aren't familiar, red dot optics have been around for a while. They're becoming more and more popular, and one of the reasons for that is the quality has come up and the cost per unit has actually come down quite nicely in a few years. The gun I'm going to run for today's demonstration is a Canik rival, the Darkside edition, which is an awesome handgun. I love it. And the optic is a Holosun 507. I've owned a couple of versions of the 507, and I find it to be a very durable, affordable, and effective product. So back to red dots. One of the first complaints I hear with shooters attempting to use red dots is, I can't find the dot. Well, one of the things that we need to focus on is if you don't have a natural point of aim, the red dot is going to be very difficult for you to find. So very quickly, what I'd like to do is cover what that is. Your natural point of aim basically means this. If you bring your gun out and get locked onto the target with perfect sight alignment and sight picture, and close your eyes and attempted the same maneuver, what are the differences in those 2 points? You need to stand and do things with your body that more naturally line up with your natural point of aim. It could be something as subtle as a foot shift. There's all kinds of information out there on developing a natural point of aim, and unfortunately, the corrections are going to be different for every specific shooter. So if you can, do some time and research that, and there's a lot of excellent drills that'll help you develop and find where your natural point of aim is. The second thing I've noticed, just yesterday actually, when I was working privately with a frustrated competition shooter, was people seem to try and run the red dot the very same way they do their iron sights. And what I mean by that is this. For years and years, we've been coached to have ultra hyper focus on the front sight post. So naturally, if nobody tells you, when you get your red dot out, people naturally tend to have a hyper focus on the dot. The problem is red dot shooting is actually designed to be target focused or threat focused. You must keep your attention on the target and sort of superimpose or overlay the dot onto the target. This is called single focal plane shooting, and it's the main reason why the dot is faster in transition between one target and the other. People are trained to use 3 focal planes normally when they shoot, which is your eye, the sights or the reticle on a scope, and the actual target. It's very unnatural when you start eliminating those focal planes. And we also have to keep in mind that red dots are mostly parallax error free. And what I mean by parallax error is this. If my front and rear sight are lined up and my eye is directly behind the front and rear sight, then there's no parallax. But notice if my fingers are lined up and I move my head, the fingers seem to move as well, even though that's not actually what happened. Rifle scopes have some sort of side turrets and side corrections, or perhaps at the front, to take that parallax error away. Red dots, based on the fact that they're pretty much error-free, are much easier to shoot once we get a couple of hacks going. And what I mean by the hack is, if you have a handgun that has co-witnessing sights, Your front sight post is an excellent way to make sure your red dot is lined up perfectly. And all one needs to do is take the dot and set it onto the top of the front sight post, sort of like a lollipop sight. For those of you that aren't familiar, what I mean by co-witnessing is I can see the rear sight and the front sight like normal through the glass of the optic. It's sort of a pass-through effect where, yes, optic is here, but I can still see directly through and line up my sights as if the optic weren't even on the top of the handgun. One of the other cool things about red dot shooting is you can shoot from farther away with the proper zero. And my experience has been, even if your red dot was tuned at the 100-yard mark, when you go work at a closer distance, it really doesn't change the point of impact all of that much. When we get into the shooting portion of today's video, I hope to demonstrate that for you. So, optics require practice, and they require constant practice with your presentation and developing your natural point of aim. I think if you give it a try, you're going to find that it actually does improve your shooting. But before we continue on with the demonstration, I'd like to leave you with one more thought. No system, whether it's iron sights or dots, are perfect. They both have advantages and disadvantages. It's very difficult to be super precise with a red dot because of its bursty nature. Depending on what I mean by that, it creates a halo. It's very difficult to sometimes decide where the actual center of the dot is. And another issue with them is the size of the dot. You can get them in 2, 3, sometimes now up to 5 MOA. Those are designed for speed, not necessarily acute precision. So you have to understand we can get things with the dot, but we are in fact going to give some things away. Another word of advice to everyone is please, please, please learn to use your iron sights. It's an important skill, it's a critical skill, and inevitably your dot will fail. It'll break, the battery will go dead. Buy a handgun where the sights co-witness, and importantly, learn to use your iron sights before trying out the red dot. Let's do some shooting. So guys, like we talked about, I have a Canik rival with a Holosun optic. One of the things that we need to discuss is back to not shooting this gun with an optic the same way you do with iron sights, which is I'm going to watch the target, not the front sight post. If I do that, you're going to inevitably try to get the gun to not drift on the optic or have the optic not flutter. And this, you get a lot of an action going on like this, and some people call it fishing. I just pretty much call it inexperience. Target first, then superimpose the dot. Hopefully you'll be able to hear the steel. Downrange is that's approximately 50 yards. We're going to give it a shot at this distance, and when we move up, I won't change the tuning on the optic at all. So, let's see what we get. That's a hit at 50 yards. I had repainted the target so that we can tell where the fresh impact is. So once again, two shots in close proximity, 50 yards. Let's go take a look. So as I walk up, you can tell our two fresh impacts at 50 yards. The weapon does have a bit of a high left trend, however, pretty acceptable. I was keeping the dot here, but focusing more on the blue bullseye. Now, once again, that could have a lot more to do with the fact of the distance that my optic is tuned in, but one of the things I would like to show you is when we cut that distance down from 50 yards down to 7 yards, it really doesn't change the point of impact all of that much. And I would argue that if we had different tuning and we actually run the optic at this distance, this is totally obtainable. You have a couple of inch spread at 50 yards. Okay, let's move a little closer and see what happens. Guys, what I've done is I've moved up to roughly 7 yards or 21 feet. In the interest of full disclosure, I haven't touched the tuning on the optic whatsoever. And what I'm hoping to illustrate is, even at exaggerated distances, one of the advantages one has with a dot doesn't really change things that much. So what I'm going to do is pull the gun, try to overlay it onto blue, and see where the point of aim and the point of impact actually is, even at close range. Most people work at distances relative to this. Two almost touching. I'm going to go ahead and reholster the gun, and let's walk up and see. You can tell two fresh impacts, slightly low. Interestingly enough, aiming here at 50 yards brought the strike of the round up. Obviously, you can always tell, or already tell, that my optic is tuned for much closer distances, but had I had to take a 50-yard shot, totally capable of doing that. Now we'll move to a middle distance and see how much things change. All right, guys, so what we've done for the next demonstration is I've moved back to roughly the 30-yard marker. And once again, I'll try to engage the target, holding the dot in an acceptable sight picture while I keep my focus on the target or the threat. So, weapons made ready. Let's see what happens from here. Let the gong quit shaking here. That is in the blue. See, what I would like to do before I mess up the data is walk down range and give everybody a demonstration so things don't get confusing about what impact happened when. So, you can follow me down, looking at the results of the shot. You'll notice that there's a magical distance where, based on the way my optic is tuned, we start to develop this left trend or left drift. That can be taken out based on where you zero your dot, meaning at what distance. So you have two right on, up close, and then you have a little bit of trail once we start to push out. Now, I know all of you are thinking at home, that could just be me. It could. And I would tell you that based on the way your eyes work and the way you hold the gun, everybody kind of tunes the zero to their own specific shooting style. So, nothing wrong with it. What I would need to do if I want to go to a greater distance is aim a little more right or push the dot over using the tuning adjustments that it comes with. But very capable at lots of distances. Wonderful system. For those who are curious and may not be familiar with Holosun optics, this is the Holosun 507 series. They make a micro, and then this is the large one, and they come in the C and the K designation between the 507. One of the things I really like about this optic so far has been that it's extremely durable. I think sometimes people are afraid to spend a lot of money on optics because they might get damaged. I can tell you this is a full aluminum body. I do a lot of work in and out of the warehouse, bumping into things in ballistics trailer and tight quarters. So far, it's held up magnificently well. It also has a very wide glass for easy acquisition of the dot. And it does have shake-awake technology, which means after 3 or so minutes when the gun lies dormant, the optic shuts off. As soon as it's jostled, it comes awake, saving you battery life. It operates on a 1632 battery, which are very common, and they boast thousands of hours of life, but you have to remember that depends on the brightness and how much you carry the gun. Another cool feature to this optic is you don't have to remove it to change the battery. There's a little plate right here. The optic comes with a little tool. Loosen the screw, pull the tray out, old battery out, new battery in, and you're back in business. So far, I've changed the battery twice, and it does not change the point of impact on the optic. Everything seems to hold really true, and it does come with a set of robust screws to keep it locked down onto your plate. So, my opinion, Holosun optics for the money are absolutely in the top maybe 1 to 3 values in red dot pistol optics on the market. Fabulous piece of gear for me so far. So I'd like to leave you with some final thoughts on the basics of red dot optics. One of the things I really like about red dot optics are it lends itself for the shooter to keep both eyes open while operating the gun. Some of the best shooters I've ever seen operated, whether it was rifle, shotgun, or pistol, with both eyes open. Keeping both your eyes open will also help a new shooter find the dot. I can't really explain why that is. It has to do with focal planes and the way your eyes work, but it absolutely does help you find that dot sooner. So if you're struggling out there, you find yourself on the struggle bus all the time with your optic and you're not keeping both eyes open, give that a chance. And the other thing that's really important about all of this is I don't pretend to be the purveyor of all knowledge about red dot optics. I can just tell you that I discovered it about a year ago with a good friend of mine, Ben DeWalt, who teaches all over the country. I went to a class and I was getting hustled pretty good by people that weren't as good as me, slow fire, with applied marksmanship, but man, were they quick at acquiring the target. And if precision isn't there, all you need is a shot on the steel. Red dot optics are awfully hard to beat. So if you're on the fence, absolutely commit to doing it because the future is now. So as always, we like to finish our videos with damaging a little poultry. I'm going to use some jacketed hollow points, and this is right at that 30-yard distance. So let's see what happens to our little cluck-cluck. I'm there. Ballistic chicken, dead. Ooh, daddy. So the shot went right down yonder and neatly out the other side. That was actually a self-defense round, so what I'm going to try to do is jam it with another one and see what happens. There's another huge impact. Try to see if you can see it with the camera here. That might have actually went in the same hole, if you can believe that or not. Now it looks like a 45. That's what you have to do at home, folks. If you want a 45, shoot it with a 9 twice. Till next time, see ya.